Solo Leveling by Gong. Chapter 41 Part 2 Hunting Humans. Ji-woo was picking up on strong signals from the high orc warriors assigned to Jaina. Has something happened in her area? Hunter Sung? Concerned, Yerim continued calling his name. Ji-woo pursed his lips and strode past her. She raised an eyebrow. What's up with him? Ji-woo had been completely at ease until just moments before. Looking at his expression now, she thought he was like a different person altogether. Wait a minute. Ji-woo was an S-rank hunter who had reacted strangely after looking over his shoulder. Had he detected something they'd missed? Yerim started getting inexplicably nervous. Yute glanced back as he sensed someone approaching and noted, Hunter Sung is coming this way. What? Jongsu stopped walking, and the entire strike squad followed suit. Why is Hunter Sung suddenly? Jongsu casually turned around and swallowed a shocked gasp when he saw Jinwoo's eyes. Jinwoo's mood had totally shifted. What's going on? Jongsu wondered if he had inadvertently done something to upset their backup, but try as he might, he couldn't come up with anything. So then, why did Jinwoo look like he was on the warpath? Jongsu swallowed hard at the thought of dealing with such a powerful person in a bad mood. They were in a dungeon, and what happens in a dungeon? Jongsu decided to tread carefully. Hunter Sung, is something bothering you? Jinwoo was in a rush, so he got straight to the point. Something urgent's come up, so I have to go. What? Jongsu was floored. The situation was worse than he'd feared. Everything had been going smoothly so far. So smoothly, in fact, that one could question the need for Jinwoo on this raid at all. But Jongsu was no amateur. He'd been working as a hunter since their inception. He knew very well that accidents happened when people lowered their guard. We must be even more careful, since everything's been going well. Not knowing what dangers lay ahead, losing their strongest member would be a major liability. Jongsu's expression darkened. If you leave, you potentially endanger the rest of us. You understand that, right? He tried to persuade Jinwoo as gently as he could, as he could tell that it'd be more dangerous to aggravate Jinwoo any further than to face this dungeon without him. That's how unnerving the S-rank hunter's expression looked. Jongsu felt like he was walking a tightrope as he studied Jinwoo. His mouth had gone very dry by the time Jinwoo finally answered. Let's do this then. Right, yes. Jongsu nodded even before hearing what was being suggested. I'll summon someone as reliable as I am. He'll take it from here. Jongsu was keen on the idea. Another hunter, and one endorsed by none other than Jinwoo Sung. Who could it be? Jong In Choi? Or maybe Hain Cha? Jongsu recalled spying a document with Hain's profile in Jinwoo's office. Hunter Cha would be perfect. Although he couldn't stop Jinwoo from leaving, the tank's expression softened. He'd welcome anyone besides Dongwook Ma from the Fame Guild. That would work for me. Jongsu's eyes twinkled. How powerful would the hunter have to be to replace the one and only Jinwoo? Anxiety began giving way to anticipation. And it wasn't just Jongsu. Listening in on the conversation, the rest of the party was staring at Jinwoo with mixed feelings of excitement and doubt. Without further delay, Jinwoo summoned the most powerful soldier in his shadow army. Baru, the Ant King, shrouded by black smoke, answered his master's call. My king. Baru emerged from the shadow and, head bowed, knelt on one knee before Jinwoo. Huh? Ah! The hunter scurried back, startled by the frightening levels of mana that Baru didn't bother to hide. Is that? How can that be? The hunters immediately recognized Baru as the monstrous and who had toyed with the S-rank hunters on Jeju Island. Shocked, Jiangsu stammered. Hunter Sung, isn't that the monster ant from Jeju Island? Jinwoo nodded. He appreciated not having to provide an explanation, as the high-rank hunters instantly grasped Baru's identity. The entire country had witnessed his might. He'll be taking over for me. What? Jiangsu asked, incredulous. Jinwoo knew what Jiangsu wanted to ask, but he didn't have time to answer every single question. He ignored the panicking guild master and issued Baru an order. Protect the humans. Understood. Baru gave a quick reply and then raised his head. What shall I do with the non-humans, my king? Jinwoo glanced toward the depths of the cave before giving another command. Do whatever you like. The desire to kill that Baru had been suppressing now transformed into a glee that immediately spread throughout his entire body. Skrea! Baru stood and roared. His screech rang throughout the cave, making the hunters tremble regardless of whether it was directed at them. We're supposed to finish the raid with this beast. Jiangsu's back was drenched in cold sweat. Ignoring the other hunters' reactions, Jinwoo then summoned 20 ant shadows to assist Baru. Scream! Scraw! The shadow beasts cried out at breathing in fresh air for the first time in a while. Needless to say, the hunters were rooted to their spots in fear. Hold on, please! Yerim's plea stopped Jinwoo in his tracks. You're leaving? After letting these beasts loose? If you want, I can call back my minions. However, the icy look Jinwoo gave Yerim sent shivers down her spine. If I do, whatever happens to the Knights Guild is on you, not me. Jinwoo had promised to protect the members of the Knights Guild, but he had no obligation to take responsibility if they rejected his help. Jinwoo's firm statement rendered the rest of the strike squad, including Yerim, speechless. In the blink of an eye, he turned and disappeared from the view of the party. How long do I have left until the cooling-off period is over? With enough distance between the Knights Guild and him, Jinwoo called up his skills window. Skill: Shadow Exchange, LV.1. Job exclusive. May use the skill after 1 hour 2 minutes and 16 seconds. Damn it. Jinwoo bit his lower lip. He had to wait over an hour if he wanted to use the Shadow Exchange skill. He hadn't stopped receiving signals from his soldiers. Jinwoo had an ominous feeling. I can't wait an hour. First things first, he needed to get out of the dungeon. But just as he decided that, one by one, the undead the strike squad had dispatched rose up. Jinwoo glared, his eyes filled with rage. His anger toward these measly beasts blocking his path was immeasurable. But before he could take a step, the undead magic beasts dropped to their knees before Jinwoo. Whump! Whump! Without exception, all the revived undead bowed to him. Why are they? Jinwoo blinked in surprise. Had the undead magic beasts tried to run away from the strike squad because of him? Is it because I'm a necromancer with an advanced job class with the power to control the undead? It was an odd situation, but there was no time to analyze it. After sending the dagger in his hand back into inventory, Jinwoo sprinted for the exit. The crowd waiting outside the gate gawked at Jinwoo. What was Hunter Sung doing emerging by himself? He paid no attention to their questioning gazes. Kaisel, the winged dragon covered in black steam, appeared. Kree! The spectators recognized the winged dragon from his handful of appearances in the media. Wow! Look at that! That's Jinwoo Sung. Jinwoo swung himself onto Kaisel's back as the crowd cheered. To my sister, as fast as you can. Jinwoo didn't care if Kaisel smashed through anything that appeared in their way. Kaisel roared joyfully at being able to fly unfettered. Kree! Soon, The dragon flapped his huge wings and was off. The final peril was unleashed. Now free to leave its lair, the master of the dungeon lumbered out of the gate. Chieftain Grokter. Black tattoos covered nearly every inch of its body. For orcs, tattoos served as records of their victories, providing account of how many enemies they had killed in battle. Grokter! Grokter! The other orcs had been waiting for its arrival outside the gate. They chanted its name as they bowed their heads. Grokter's own head stood tall, nearly scraping the ceiling. There was a loud commotion coming from an upper floor. The reconnaissance team had led their warriors on a mission to occupy the humans' castle a while ago, yet the battle was not over. A nervous orc hurried to explain the situation to the displeased chieftain. High orc warriors are aiding the humans. High orcs! Ordinary orcs were no match for high orcs. It was time for the master to step in. How many? 3. Even if they were fighting high orcs, how could tens of warriors from the great orc tribe be struggling against just 3 opponents? How pathetic! Grokter spat, its face twisting in irritation. The other orcs shuddered at their chieftain's ire. 5 great orcs, Grokter's personal guard, also exited the gate huffing and puffing, unable to keep pace with the chieftain's stride. After confirming they were present, Grokter pointed its chin at the orc that had relayed the information. Lead the way! The orc bowed and started off, the chieftain and bodyguards following close behind. Grokter's eyes glittered. Those arrogant upstarts. It was time for the high orcs to pay the price for disrupting their hunt. Jiangsu couldn't believe they'd been abruptly abandoned alongside magic beast ants. Boss! Hang on! I need to think. Scraw. Cree. Gra. As he observed the 20-plus magic beasts, or, well, minions, Jiangsu was struck with a burning desire to quit the raid. And that one, the abnormally large one with wings on its back. Wasn't that the monster ant who'd toyed with the S-rank hunters on Jeju Island? The amount of magic power it held sent chills up his spine. If it directs any hostility toward us. Jiangsu was marveling at the S-rank hunters who had taken on this terrible beast when a thought struck him. Wait a minute. Doubts began creeping in. Who in the world was Jin Wusung to command such a beast as a minion? Hunter Sung single-handedly defeated this beast too, right? His heart started racing as he got lost in his thoughts. No, I'm overthinking this. He shook his head to clear it. Never mind Jin Wusung's true identity and how powerful he was. Jiangsu needed to focus on whether they should continue this raid with these beasts. Okay, let's say we give up on the raid. How would he explain that to the reporters waiting outside the gate? Should he say they couldn't continue due to Hunter Sung's unexpected departure? Or that they had to give up because they were too scared of the minions Hunter Sung had summoned for their benefit? How embarrassing would that be? Either explanation would make the guild a laughingstock. Jiangsu gritted his teeth. Then we keep going. Minions couldn't be that scary. After all, they were just Jinwu's lackeys, right? Changing his perspective helped Jiangsu relax. They're just Hunter Sung's minions, so what could go wrong? As Jiangsu looked around with newfound confidence, Baru approached him. Yikes. The tank's confidence went up in smoke, and he was barely able to force out a polite, "S8, shall we go then?" However, Baru showed no reaction whatsoever to the hunter's voice. He just stood there staring at Jiangsu, who wondered if he wasn't being polite enough. With that in mind, he strove to speak even more deferentially. "S8, shall we be off then, sir?" Baru still didn't budge. The longer Jiangsu kept his eyes trained on the king ants, the more he felt like he was losing his mind from the intense mana those black orbs were radiating. At that moment, Yute approached from behind. "Are we going to press on with these guys?" Seizing on the vice president's prodding, Jiangsu vented his stress on his subordinate. "I said, be quiet." He barely bit back the words. "Why don't you lead the squad and tell everyone we're giving up?" He leveled a glare at poor Yute for a while, then turned back to Baru and swallowed nervously. He wanted to break free of this awkward situation as soon as he could. Is it not moving because it doesn't understand me? Jiangsu decided to change his approach and forced his facial muscles into a smile, then pointed to a passageway leading farther into the dungeon. "Front, front!" Then, pew! With the sound of a gunshot through a silencer, the monstrous ant suddenly vanished. Huh? Where did the beast go? Baru returned even before Jiangsu could start looking for him. Tack. Baru raised whatever it was he was holding. What's that? Upon closer inspection, Jiangsu realized it was the head of a magic beast, and not just any magic beast. It was the head of a death knight, one of the highest rank undead magic beasts. The beast's head had been ripped off its body, helmet and all. AR! Jiangsu fell to the floor, horrified. The startled strike squad gathered around him. Baru cast an eye over the band of hunters, and then shouted at the other ants, throwing the death knight's head away without a care. Scraw! The army of ants began advancing in perfect unison. Baru gazed down at Jiangsu without a word before slowly turning and following the other ants. The hunters checked on their leader. "Boss! President Park, are you okay? Are you all right?" Jiangsu looked like he'd had all the energy sucked out of him. Yeah. I'm fine." Physically, he was fine, but his heart ached for some reason. He felt like he'd been mocked by the minion. It's not possible, but there was no way the minion was intelligent enough for that. In any case, Jiangsu couldn't quit the raid after enduring such humiliation. He stood up and dusted himself off. "We need to get moving too." The other hunters stared at him in disbelief. "Pardon? You want us to follow those guys? How do you expect us to do a raid with those monsters? I'm out." "Me too." Jiangsu sighed in annoyance. Did he really have to spell it out for them? He found the severed head the ant had tossed aside and held it up. "Whoa! Is that a head of a death knight? A death knight?" The veteran hunters correctly identified the helmet and audibly gasped. Jiangsu calmly explained, "You all know how valuable essence stones from the top-ranked magic beasts are, right?" The other hunters swallowed hard. "All we have to do is follow them and pick up the essence stones." As Jiangsu predicted, smiles began blossoming across the strike squad's faces. He asked them one final question. "Anyone still want out?" The hunters moved in even more perfect unison than the army of ants. "What are you waiting for, sir? Hurry up, sir. You'll get left behind. Don't just stand there, boss." Jiangsu tooted. "These people, honestly." And thus, the Knights Guild's raid resumed. Jinwoo kept his gaze trained below. People, roads, cars, buildings, rivers, trees, a mountain, a mountain, a mountain, another mountain. The scenery changed rapidly. He's fast. When he wasn't being held back, Kaisel could fly at incredible speeds. Had Jinwoo been an ordinary person and not a high-rank hunter, the side effects of going at such a velocity would have killed him. Even so, Jinwoo was desperate. The signals from his soldiers were growing weaker. In addition to that, stats. MP 8, 619/8, 770. Somewhere along the way, his mana level had begun to decrease. This was worse than he thought. It meant the High Orc Shadow soldiers were being destroyed and having to regenerate. An enemy powerful enough to kill Shadow soldiers is threatening China. Jinwa's visage grew grim. Even if the enemy didn't touch a hair on Jaina's head, he was still determined to make mincemeat out of it. His eyes were like daggers. Faster. Kree! Kaisel roared at the command and sped up. The High Orc warriors were strong, but they were no match for Grokter, the chieftain of the Orc tribe. Grokter waved its subjects aside and stepped forward. It easily avoided the attacks of the High Orcs and pulled out the curved blade strapped to its waist. "Is that all you got?" The classroom was littered with roughly 50 Orc corpses. 50 of its warriors had been killed by these 3 High Orcs. "Entertain me some more, oh High Orc warriors!" The chieftain channeled its rage into its merciless sword swings. Grokter's blade moved fluidly through the air and began slicing through the High Orc's armor. "Ah! Yah!" The screams came not from its victims, but from the humans behind them. Grokter frowned. Noisy pests. They were next after the High Orcs. Grokter sliced off a High Orc's arm and slit its throat in quick succession, as if bored of this fight. SHHHK. The Orcs that had been forced to retreat outside the classroom by their enemies cheered. "Grokter! Grokter!" However, Grokter's eyes twitched as the headless High Orc transformed into black smoke and then rematerialized in its original form. Is this a magic spell? The same thing happened multiple times. "Graph!" Grokter let out a furious yell. It had cut down the High Orcs over and over, but the cockroaches kept coming back to life. "I can easily kill them 100 or even 1,000 times." But the battle would never end. And throughout, the voice in its head continued urging it to kill humans. Throb, throb. Grokter had a headache from the incessant nagging. However, it couldn't exactly ignore the High Orcs to kill the humans either. "I must finish this." It mulled things over. If the High Orcs were soldiers conjured by a spell, there had to be someone controlling them. Over the many battles in its lifetime, Grokter had faced all kinds of magic spells, so it knew very well how to end this dirty trick. Her, the female human standing a ways behind the High Orcs and holding her breath, had a connection, albeit a weak one, to them. Grokter's eyes blazed. "Is it you?" The beast shifted the target of its ire. Jaina made brief eye contact with Grokter and trembled. She definitely knew something. Grokter went with its hunch and pointed at Jaina while calling over its shoulder. "Kill the girl!" Even before Grokter completed its command, its bodyguards sprang into action from where they'd been watching the fight. As they did, the High Orcs ignored Grokter and immediately moved to block the guards. I knew it. Grokter's guess was right. It approached Jaina while the High Orcs were preoccupied. "So it was you." Grokter grabbed Jaina by the neck with one hand. "Ah!" Jaina couldn't even scream with the pressure on her throat. Grokter tilted its head. The woman's neck was so thin, it could snap it with a finger. Could this human really cast high-level spells that made warriors immortal? There was only one way to find out. "Guess I'll have my answer when I kill her." Just as Grokter was about to squeeze and break the girl's neck. Skrea! The roar of a winged dragon resonated from the distance.